Welcome to Denison Montessori's virtual information session in preparation for DPS's school choice in January 2021. My name is Natalie and I'm the principal of Denison, and I will be sharing information about our school today. So Denison Montessori is a over 30-year-old public Montessori school located in Southwest Denver. You may be wondering, what is Montessori? So the Montessori method was developed by Dr. Maria Montessori in the early 1900s, and Montessori classrooms are immediately recognizable. You'll see children working independently as well as in small groups, often with specially designed Montessori learning materials. Students are typically deeply engaged in their work, respectful of themselves and their students and their surroundings. Here are some examples of Montessori materials that you would see if you were able to do a tour in our building at this time. The materials you see presented here are typically used with children as they work to develop their math conceptualizations. So Montessori students, according to the American Montessori Society, are allowed to foster rigorous, self-motivated growth for children and adolescents in all areas of their development, whether that's cognitive, emotional, social, or physical. And here is a picture of Dr. Montessori herself. If you were able to be in Denison's building, you would see this very portrait in our school's lobby. And this quote really resonates with our school and our community as to why Montessori is so important. Within the child lies the fate of the future. So as we think a little more closely about some compelling reasons for you to consider a Montessori education for your child, we know that from an early age, students experience the power of student voice in a Montessori classroom. Students may engage in practical life lessons, sensorial lessons, math lessons, language lessons, geography lessons. Um, there's really no limit to what children can choose to explore in a Montessori classroom. And the focus is allowing children to develop into independent learners. So as you'll see on the screen here, it is a very different approach to both teaching and learning. And how the child learns is just as important as what the child learns. And we're always focused on the development of the whole child and preparing them for their time and place in our society. Here are a couple of photos of examples of children at work in a primary classroom. This is pre-pandemic in terms of you don't see any PPE on our children in these pictures, but you see on the left children engaging with geography materials and on the right engaging with math materials. So there are 8 specific principles of Montessori that we thought were important for you to understand as you consider Denison Montessori as the best educational choice for your child. So we'll just walk through these principles at this time. And first of all is that thinking and learning are enhanced by movement. And when children have the opportunity to get up and explore their environment and learn in a location that they've chosen, it's a really powerful example of student voice and choice in the learning process. Learning and well-being are improved when we have a sense of control over our lives. And so that fits nicely with what was just discussed in terms of thinking and learning enhanced by movement. We also know that we learn best when we are interested in what we are learning, which is why it is so powerful for children to have that choice in what it is they learn. One of the other pieces that can be very different about a Montessori education is that we don't tie extrinsic rewards to an activity. So what we have found is that when you provide those extrinsic rewards, it often negatively impacts motivation for children to engage in that particular activity when the reward is withdrawn. We really are working to foster that sense of intrinsic motivation and accomplishment by choosing what and when they study different topics. We also know that children learn well from peers and respond well to collaborative learning situations. And so our classrooms are designed to promote those opportunities for our children. Montessori method also knows that learning is deeper and richer when learning is situated in meaningful contexts as opposed to abstract contexts. So really giving those real world connections and giving students opportunity to apply what they've learned to situations is critical. We also realize that particular forms of adult interaction are associated with more optimal child outcomes and really work to model those behaviors that we want to see in our children and our interactions with the children and with other adults in the building and the community. We also know that order, routine, and ritual really help children thrive. And so Montessori classrooms provide those opportunities for the children within that community. So let's take a few minutes here just to explore the differences between the Montessori experience and a traditional classroom. In a traditional classroom, you will often see textbooks or digital texts, pencils and paper, worksheets, and photocopies. In a Montessori classroom, you're going to see a rich variety of specially prepared kinesthetic materials that allow for a specific control of error and specific reference materials. That way, the children are able to correct their own errors and really work to develop that independence while they are learning. Traditional classrooms also work on provide opportunities for children to work and learn without a specific emphasis on social development. Whereas Montessori classrooms are really working on keeping that whole child approach at the forefront of what is being provided to children so that we're developing the whole child. In a traditional classroom, you will often see narrow unit-driven curricula as opposed to a Montessori classroom that has a unified, internationally developed curriculum that allows children to explore particular avenues of interest to them, as well as the application of what they have learned. Traditional instruction focuses on children learning one individual subject at a time, whereas a Montessori environment allows the integration of subjects and learning across content based on the premises of developmental psychology. Some other differences between traditional instruction and the Montessori method is that in a traditional classroom, they'll have blocks of time devoted to certain content. So children may come in a classroom and do literacy activities first thing in the morning, then transition to math, then transition to science, then transition back to more literacy, as opposed to a Montessori classroom where you're going to see large blocks of time for uninterrupted work cycles. And those are really critical and allow children the time to really go and explore deeply into the content that they have chosen for that day in alignment with their work plans. In traditional instruction, you'll also see single graded classrooms, whereas we provide multi-age classrooms. And we'll talk about those classrooms a little bit more later, but it really provides opportunities for children to teach and collaborate with each other, and for the older children in the classroom to develop their leadership skills as they are relied upon by the younger children in their classroom. Traditional instruction often involves children sitting at their desks without as much opportunity to interact with each other or their teachers. As opposed to a Montessori classroom, you will see children moving around the classroom. It will be quiet and it will be a very beneficial community that's very beneficial to the child's learning, but they have that freedom to get up, to move around, to return materials, to select materials, to work in small groups with other members of their classroom. And the final area that we'd like to highlight as a difference between traditional instruction and the Montessori method is you'll see product-focused report cards, whereas we use a variety of ways to communicate with families, whether it's a process-focused assessment, a skills checklist, mastery benchmarks, as to how a children's growth is being monitored. So we have here just a few examples of the materials that you may see in our classrooms. We have an example of a geography lesson We have a sensorial task with the pink tower. We have the movable alphabet, which children use to begin their basic writing and spelling skills. And then you see the stamp game at the bottom that is used for children to develop their conceptualization of math content. Also, a couple more examples of a teacher working with a small group of students in our library at Denison. This particular lesson was a mixed grade lesson on fractions. And the teacher is able to pull the small group and go to another space because of the teacher assistant that's in the classroom for a large part of the instructional day. And that is one thing that I think is definitely a difference between Denison and other elementary schools, is the amount of paraprofessional or teacher assistant support that our teachers have to provide more individualized support to our children. The second picture just is an example of students working in our school's garden. It's really important that children have an opportunity to connect with nature and learn in the outside environment as well as the inside environment. So we have several outdoor spaces at Denison that allow us to capitalize on children's love for working with their hands, being outside, and applying their learning in a different outside the classroom fashion. Another aspect of Montessori instruction that you may have heard about, and that is important to the Denison Montessori community, is grace and courtesy. So grace and courtesy is really just helping students understand and develop polite social norms and modeling, having those behaviors modeled for them by the adults in the building, and having the expectation that we all treat each other with kindness, with respect, and that we all want to be a part of this kind, caring, respectful community. So it begins with explicit lessons in our youngest primary classrooms and continues into elementary. Some of the examples of primary lessons might be how to greet each other, how to welcome a visitor in the classroom, how to get the attention of a teacher without interrupting the teacher, how to participate in a group discussion without interrupting another member of the group, how to listen in a conversation, how to walk carefully around the classroom and retrieve materials and return materials within the classroom, following directions, resolving social conflict, how to hold a door for someone, how to use polite words such as please, thank you, etc. So this is something that if you were able to do a tour, you would definitely notice when you walk in the classrooms or walk in the building. It's just the calmness and the level of respect which community members treat each other. So as we mentioned a little bit earlier, the Montessori classroom setup is multi-age. So our youngest children are in the primary classroom, and that is where we have our ECE3, our ECE4, and our kindergarten children. ECE4 and kindergarten students are with us all day. ECE3 is with us for the morning only. Our lower elementary classrooms are composed of first, second, and third grade students. Our upper elementary classes house our fourth, fifth, and sixth grade students. In addition to the uninterrupted work cycles that children have during the morning at Denison, they do have opportunity to participate in specials in the afternoons. And the specials that we provide are visual arts, PE, music, technology that really integrates the cultural science aspect of Montessori into their instruction, and our library. Our library is not a special, but it is a beautiful library, a historically award-winning library, and is a place that children are encouraged to visit and explore books and get what they need from our library. Here's an example of some artwork that our incredible art teacher, Miss Jennifer, submitted at the end of the last school year to DPS's citywide art show. It was virtual last year, but she did a phenomenal job in compiling work and making sure the Denison Montessori children were represented. And similarly, even though the Shakespeare Festival was virtual last year, we were still able to submit 2 scenes to the Shakespeare Festival through our Shakespeare Club. And then the picture on the right here just is an example of a representation of the solar system that was created in alignment with one strand of the cosmic education that is critical to Montessori. Here's an example of a sample schedule for a lower elementary or an upper elementary classroom. Um, Students can arrive starting at 8:30 and in a typical year when we're not observing COVID precautions, have breakfast in our multi-purpose space, which is where food is served in the mornings. Then students transition to their classroom for their morning work period. They then have lunch and recess from 12 to 1 o'clock. Our students eat lunch in the classroom, so they continue working on some of those grace and courtesy practices that were discussed earlier, as well as have opportunity for a decent, decent recess so they can get out, move, and have opportunity to interact with other peers socially. Then the afternoon, we have the afternoon work period, and students do have specials during that afternoon work period time. And then they move towards dismissal. One of the things that's really important to Denison as a school is our school culture. And as I mentioned earlier, it's very peaceful and respectful. And we really value the rose, the concept of the rose. And so the rose at Denison stands for respect others, self, and environment. And that really contributes to the sense of community that we have within our classrooms and that we have throughout the school. So at Denison, it's really important to know that we take our commitment to families very seriously and that we are dedicated to utilizing authentic Montessori practices to prepare students for their time and place. And we do this by meeting children's physical, intellectual, social, emotional, and academic needs, inspiring children to grow to their fullest potential, and becoming contributing members of society, and melding children's school, family, and community experiences. So the school choice process begins with the opening of the round one school choice window on January 15th, and the school choice window closes on February 16th. You can find more information about the school choice process at the website listed or shown at the bottom of the screen. I think it's important to know that students living anywhere in the city can apply to Denison's program through DPS's school choice process. And we typically have children that come from many different parts of the city to take advantage of our public Montessori school. If this has been interesting to you and you would like more information about Denison, I would encourage you to register for one of our virtual question and answer sessions that we will be holding during the choice window. So the sessions are listed here, and the link will be available to you. You can also call the main office to get the information on how to register, but we really look forward to having you join us and learn more about Denison Montessori. Thank you so much for your time. We hope to be in touch and have you join our community.